Students, good evening. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So we will start our class. So today is our topic assessing risk. So meaning of hazards, risk profiling and risk assessment. We will discuss risk profiling, purpose of risk assessment, a suitable and sufficient risk assessment, a general approach to risk assessment, 5 steps. We will study this. Application of risk assessment for specific type of risk and special cases. One by one, we will study. Meaning of hazards, risk profiling, and risk assessment. Hazards, a source of energy with the potential of causing immediate injury to personnel and damage to equipment, environment, or structure, are the properties of toxic substances such as chemicals, gases, or radioactivity that may cause health problem immediately or in the short term or in long term in people exposed to those substances. So this is the definition of hazards, something with potential to cause harm. In simple words, that is a hazard. Risk, the likelihood or probability that the harm or loss will come about, taking into account the extent and severity of the outcome. So in the risk, we need two things. One is the likelihood, and the other one is the severity. Risk profiling, the process of examining the nature and level of health and safety threats faced by an organization. We will study in detail this risk profiling later. Risk assessment, the process of evaluating the risk to safety and health arising from hazards at work. We will also study risk assessment in detail later. Then risk profiling. What is involved? Who should be involved? The risk profiling process. We will study these three topics in detail. What is involved? Risk profiling examines the range of health and safety threats that could occur. And risk profiling examines the range of health and safety threats that could occur. Consider the nature of the adverse effects and how likely they are to occur. Please mute your mic. Okay. So risk profiling examines the range of health and safety threats that could occur. Consider the nature of the adverse effects of the threats and how likely they are to occur. Then the scope of the adverse effects are considered in terms of harm to people, disruption to the organizations, and state cost. When considering the likelihood and scope of these adverse effects, the effectiveness of control measures known to be in place in determined, because the risk profiling is a broad picture. In this, we will determine the risk or the threats in the whole organizations. We will identify the threats and we will categorize the threats as a whole. And then we will prioritize that and then we will give the control measures to that. Then what is involved? Risk profiling examines the range of health and safety. We already studied this. So who should be involved in risk profiling? Those who undertake risk profiling need to be competent to do so. The person who undertake risk profiling, who should be competent. This will mean involving those in the organization that can provide a competent perspective on the threats and control measures. This may require the use of a team or the efforts of competent individuals to gather this wide perspective from various individuals in the organizations. Okay, so next, the risk profiling process. What is the risk profiling process? The risk profile process examines the nature and level of the risk faced by the organization. Then likelihood of adverse effects occurring from that risk. After that, level of destruction or level of disruptions, the business cost and consequences is set with adverse effects. Then the nature, please mute your mic, please. Okay. Then the nature of adverse effectiveness of the control measures in place to manage those risks. Risk profiling involves gathering information about operations, process, include information generated from interviews. So in risk profiling, we will check the whole organization, we will check the risk in the organization, then we will check the likelihood of that risk, and we will check that how that disturb the business, the cost, the consequences from that disruptions, and then we will give the control measures according to the priority to that risk. Then next, purpose of risk assessment. What is risk assessment? What is the purpose of risk assessment? The purpose of risk assessment or the purpose of health and safety risk assessment is to provide information to enable organization to manage risk and prevent workplace incidents. This is the purpose of the risk assessment. To manage risk and prevent incidents in the workplace. Risk assessment process provide organization with the means to identify hazards, sometimes before they result in harm, and to evaluate the priority and resources needed to control them. This enables preventive and precautionary measures to be applied on a timely basis, enabling risk to be reduced or eliminated. The purpose of risk assessment to identify the hazards and then identify the risk from that hazards and then control that risk. That is this, in the simple words, that is the purpose. Okay, but we will study this in detail in this lecture. Okay, so requirements to conduct risk assessment. The International Labour Office, ILO, has established a number of health and safety conventions, recommendations, and guidance. Please mute your mic. Please mute. Gary. Okay. Conducting health and safety risk assessment is part of the principles and practice established by these requirements. Although the ILO has not set out specific requirements for employers to conduct risk assessment, it does require that member states protect workers by eliminating or minimizing work-related hazards and risks in accordance with the national law and practice. Okay, so this is the purpose of risk assessment, to protect the workers, to eliminate the hazards. A suitable and sufficient risk assessment. The term suitable and sufficient, when used in relation to conduct risk assessments, relates to how well they are done and the standard it needs to reach. To be suitable and sufficient, a risk assessment should show that a proper check was made. You asked who might be affected. You dealt with all the obvious significant risks, taking into account the number of people who could be involved. The precautions were responsible, and the remaining risk is low. You involve your workers or their representative in the process of risk assessment. Then a general approach to risk assessment, 5 steps. The first step is identify the hazards. The second, identify people at risk. And third one, evaluating risk and adequacy of current controls. Then recording significant findings and reasons for review, that why we will review the risk assessment. So 5-step approach is: step 1, identify the hazards; step 2, decide who might be harmed and how; step 3, evaluate the risk and decide on precaution; step 4, record your findings and implement them; and step 5, review your assessment and update as necessary. My voice is clear to you people or not? Hello, because some student asking. Ali Imran, my voice is clear? Hafizullah, my voice is clear? Are you hear me? Okay. The first step of risk assessment, identifying hazards. The first step in the risk assessment process is to identify the work, task, and associated hazards. We will identify the hazards. Hazards can be grouped into health hazards and safety hazards. The identification of hazards can be done in many ways. For example, activities, it may be necessary to break the activity down into its component parts by using task analysis. We are using task analysis to break down the job or the task in small steps, and then we will identify hazards from each step. Then identifying the hazard, the health hazards categories are chemicals, biological, physical, and psychological, ergonomics. The safety hazards categories are machinery hazard, flying or falling objects, moving vehicles, stuck against something fixed or stationary, mechanicals handling, lifting or carrying some things, slips, trips, and falls on the same levels, working from height, pressure equipments, dangerous substances, fire, confined space, electricity, animals, workplace violence. These are safety hazards. Both internal and external sources of information should be consulted. Internal sources include incident in absence records. We will check incident in absence records for internal sources for internal information. Investigation reports, results of audits or inspections, maintenance reports. External sources include manufacturers' data, legislation, HEC publication, British, European, and international standards. The next, the likelihood, evaluating the risk. Then the next step, the second step, identifying people at risk. In the risk assessment process, it is necessary to identify the people at risk. The worker who at risk, we need to identify those. This may mean noting groups or types of people at risk. Specific groups to be considered include vulnerable peoples, for example, new workers, those with disabilities, workers that have ill health or on the medications. Young workers are also vulnerable. The pregnant woman. These are the types of workers, they are vulnerable, or they are the people who are vulnerable. Operators, maintenance staffs, cleaner, contractors, visitors, and public. These are the people, they are working in the industry, and we will identify these people who might be risk and how they can be at risk. We can identify that how they are at risk. Then evaluating the risk, the third step, evaluating the risk and adequacy of current control. After the hazards have been identified, it is necessary to evaluate the risk from that hazards. The risk assessment process requires a judgment for each hazard to decide realistically what the most likely outcome is and how likely this is to occur. It may be a matter of simple subjective judgment, or it may require a more complex technique depending on the complexity of the situation. In order to do this, the likelihood and the probable severity of harm must be considered. Likelihood categories, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One is improbable, one is loss, accident, incidents, or illness could only occur under exceptional conditions. The situation is well managed and all reasonable precautions have been taken. So this is exceptional condition because all the control measures taken. So the one we can give the one category for that all the control measures given. But if the chance is there, that will be one and that is improbable. Then the second, the two, the low. This situation is generally well managed. However, occasional lapses could occur. This also applies to situation where people are required to behave safely in order to protect themselves but are well trained. It's also a situation that the worker are well trained. So if there is any chances of hazards, then we'll give two category, and this will be a low category. Third one, medium category of likelihood. In this, the insufficient or substandard controls in place in control measures are insufficient or substandard. Loss is likely during normal operations. However, it may occur in emergencies or non-routine conditions. For example, key lift in forklift truck, obstruct gangways, refresher trainings required. Four category, that is a high category, serious failure in management control, that is failure. The effect of human behavior or other factors could cause an accident or incident. But it is unlikely without these additional factors, for example, ladder not secured properly, oil spilled on floor, properly trained personnel. The fifth, almost certain absence of any management controls. So there will be no control measures. If conditions remain unchanged, there is almost 100% certainty that an accident or incident will happen. For example, broken rung on a ladder, live exposed electrical conductor, and untrained personnel. So this is the last category of likelihood, the fifth five, that if this condition available, the accident will be happen. Because in sometime this likelihood we can give 1, 2, 3. Sometimes we can give in one A, B, C, D in other figures, but the principle is same. Okay. So then severity category, one minor category causing minor injury, for example, cuts, scratches, no lost time likely other than for first aid treatment or repair or superficial damage, for example, to interior deteriorations. Too low, causing significant injuries, for example, sprain, bruises, or lacerations, lungs irritations, irritant dermatitis. And third category, we will give medium, causing temporary disability, for example, fractures, electrical burns, chemical burns, heat exhaustion. Four, we will give for high category of the severity, causing permanent disability, for example, loss of limbs, sights of hearing, cancer, chronic obstructive, pulmonary disease. So the fifth one, the five category we will give for major causing death to one or more people or loss or damage to is such that it could cause serious business disruptions. For example, major fire, explosion, or structure damage. In this, they will the fire category, that is a major category, and in this the severity will be more. So maybe there may be one death or more deaths. The business will be disturbed. The evaluating risk and adequacy of current controls. The formula for risk assessment: risk rating equal likelihood into severity, where the likelihood is how likely a loss will occur as a result of contacting with hazards. Severity is the probable amount of harm from contacting with hazards. The risk rating is the level of risk after current control have been taken into account. Okay? So evaluating risk and adequacy of control, a hierarchy of controls is list of measures designed to control risk that is considered in their order of importance and effectiveness. So this is a hierarchy of control, which we will use to control the risk, which we will use to control the risk which we calculated. And for calculation, we have the formula that is risk equal likelihood into severity. A hierarchy of control is a list of measures designed to control risk that are considered in their order of importance and effectiveness. The first and most effective control measure that eliminate the hazards. We will eliminate the hazards. If we cannot eliminate the hazard, then substitute with less hazardous process, operations, materials, or equipment. Third, use of engineering controls and reorganization of work. Fourth one, use of administrative control, including training. Fifth, use of adequacy, personal protective equipment. Use adequate personal protective equipment. So these are 5 categories which we will use to control the risk in the workplace. First, we will eliminate the hazards. If we cannot eliminate the hazard, then we will substitute that hazard with the less hazardous materials. If we cannot substitute, then we will use the engineering control. We will isolate the hazards, or we will enclose the hazards in engineering control. Then, if we cannot, then the other category, we will use the administrative control. For example, training, permit work system, safe system of work, method of statements, proper supervision, adequate instructions. These are all administrative control measures. And the last one, that is personal protective equipment. So the most effective is eliminating the hazards, and the least effective is the personal protective equipment. Because with personal protective equipment, we can only protect only one person. And the elimination of the hazard, we can protect all the workers. So that is the most effective control measure. Hazards identifications, we can inspect the workplace, or we can analyze the task, and we can bring the small components from that task. We can break down the job or the task, and we can when we can break down the task in small components, we can identify the hazards in each components or each steps, and then we can give the control measures according to that. Then step number 4, recording significant finding. Employees should record the data considered in the risk assessment process and significant finds of the risk assessment. We need to identify, the employer need to identify the hazards, identify the people, evaluate the risk, and then he need to record those all the things, record the risk, record the hazard, everything they need to record. And the record will assist in providing proof that a suitable and sufficient risk assessment has been made. The record should present an effective statement of hazards and risk, and should lead management to take actions to eliminate and reduce that risk. Okay, so this is a table. Numbers are serial number, and then hazards identification, a set risk from that hazard, then persons at risk, the people at risk, and then existing control measure and likelihood from the hazards, and then severity from the hazards, and current risk rating. After that, we will commence and take actions. Okay, so these are simple tables, but in organization we can use in different way for the risk assessments, but the principle is same. Reason for review the risk assessment. Why we will review the risk assessment? The risk assessment should be periodically reviewed and updated. In addition, a review of risk assessment should be carried out following any significant change to workplace, internal or external. We can use the risk assessment and we will review that risk assessment periodically, for example, annually. And if there is any accident or incidents, then we will review. If there is any law change, then we will review. If enforcement authority tell us to review your risk assessment or change your risk assessment, if the key personnel will change, then we will also review. If the process change, the technology change, then or the workplace change, then we will review our risk assessment. Okay, so in this condition, we will review our risk assessment. Application of risk assessments for specific types of risk and special cases. Example of when specific risk assessment methodologies are required. Why specific risk assessment methods are required. Special case applications of risk assessment. So we will discuss examples of are when specific risk assessment methodologies are required. The general approach to risk assessment described previously is likely to be adequate for the identification and assessment of general risk in workplace. However, some specific type of risk in special cases may require an enhanced approach where the specific factors are considered. For example, it is generally accepted that specific risk arising from fire, from noise, and chemical substances require specific factors to be considered during the risk assessment. During the risk assessment process, because this need specific control measure. Similarly, risk arising from displacement in manual handling activities benefits from an approach where specific factors are considered in the risk assessment process. For specific risk assessment or for specific risk, we need to make the risk assessment in a specific way, and we need to assess those factors which are needed special care. For that, we need to assess that. Moreover, when we are preparing the risk assessment, we need to consider the lone worker, the disabled worker, maybe the pregnant woman may be there, maybe other young workers may be there. So we need to consider these factors also. Specific risk methods that take account of factors specific to the particular risk are required to enable the proper systematic and consideration of all relevant issues that contribute to the risk. Okay, so special case application of risk assessment. Young people, risk assessment should be considered work beyond the young person's physically or mentally capacity, because the young people, they are under 70 and they don't have any experience. So when we are preparing the risk assessment, we need to consider the young people because they are most vulnerable to the risk. Then expectant and nursing mothers, risk assessment should be considered exposure to chemical. Risk assessment should consider exposure to chemical, biological exposure, or ergonomic issues. As the expectant or nursing mothers, they are very near to risk. We need to consider them during our risk assessment. We need to prepare the special factors for them. For example, how if there's any emergency, how we will protect those expectant or nursing mothers, or some activities that are not um, allowable for those expectant or nursing mothers. Disabled workers, disabilities vary greatly, so it may be necessary conduct separate risk assessment for disabled workers. So because they are disabled, so we need to consider if we have disabled workers, we need to consider them in our risk assessment. We need to give special care to those people. Lone workers, the hazards from the work are often the same as they would be if person was working with other. But the additional risk control of having others to provide routine assistance, for example, to move some things or hold something, are not available. The lone workers we need to consider because they will be lone during the work or during the other. We need to consider those factors which may create hazards for them, and we need to control those hazards because this is very important. Because we have, for example, if we have drivers, they are driving lonely, so we need to consider the route, the vehicles, the first aid consideration, all the things we need to consider. These are the factors which we need to put in our risk assessment. The other topic, management of change. So management of change, the objective of management of change process is to minimize the introduction of new hazards and risk into the workplace and to identify opportunities for improvements as change occur. Because the change may be occur in our project or in our organization. So we need to manage that change. That's very important. The efforts and resources put into the process should be proportionate to the complexity of the change, the scale of the hazards concerned, and the degree to which the change may impact on the management of major hazards. As the change progresses, health and safety performance should be reviewed to ensure there are no adverse impact due to the hazard not identified or control measures not being effective. Because if there is any change in our project or in our company, we need to consider that and we need to control that change because that will bring more hazards, more risk. There will be new people will come for to do the activity with that change because the new technology will come. So we need to manage those risks in a better manner. We need to because maybe if we have existing facilities that is less, if there is any change, maybe there will be more people, more workers. So we need to control those factors. For the change, we need to prepare everything. We need to prepare risk assessments. We need to prepare for them emergency procedures. That is the change work. Okay. For example, commissioning work, because we are working in a project at the last stage that will be changed. There will be more hazards. Yeah, they are testing the equipments, they are testing the other things. So that is a change in the projects. We need to properly manage that change in a proper manner. Management of change, typical changes, possible impact of changes, overall approach to the management of change, managing the impact of change, review of change. We will discuss this one by one. Typical changes, typical types of change likely to be encountered in the workplace include organizational change. For example, new workers, managers promoted, temporary contracted seasonal workers introduced, or even complete restructuring of the organization. So these are the changes. Activity changes, for example, changes to process, equipment, infrastructure, construction work, and work practices. Material changes, for example, new chemical, raw material change from liquid form to powder, packing change from solid container to plastic sacks, pulling in bulks, making the size of items larger. So these are the changes, organizational changes, activities changes, and material changes. So we need to manage this all the changes in a better manner. So how we will possible impact of the changes, possible effects from these changes. Ineffective management of change is one of the leading cause of serious incidents. If we will not, if we will not manage in a better manner, so the cause will be a serious incident. Some of the possible impact of ineffective management of change could include changing of chemical to speed up a chemical reactions, could lead to increased heat that the equipment is not designed to withstand, and a fire may result. That is the results. Changing equipment that works at a faster rate may lead to ergonomic hazards and a fatigue of workers. Changing from manual handling of goods to the use of a battery-powered forklift truck would introduce the hazards of moving vehicles in the workplace, electrical hazards, and explosive gas hazards from the battery charging process. Overall approach to manage the change. The main tips involved in management of change are as follows. The first step, identification of the change. We will identify the change in our company or in our organization. Second step, preliminary screening of the health and safety impacts from that change. For example, design review. Third step, preliminary plans for the implementation of change. We need a proper plan for the implementation of the change. Then we need a risk assessment. Fourth step, five, development or approval of final plans, including control measures for that change. Six, implementation of the change. Seven, final assessment and closeout. So these are the steps. In this manner, we can manage our change in a better manner. Because more than this, we need proper training for those people who will work in that change process or change handling change material or in the change. So we need proper risk assessment. We need proper method of statements. We need proper emergency procedure for that change. And we also need a new facilities, a new place for those workers who will be involved in that change. Managing the impact of change, how you will manage the impact or the result of the change. The main control measures to mitigate the impact of change include communication and cooperation. Very important. We need proper communication between the people, between the people, and we need cooperation because there will be more people, there will be more contractors. Then we need risk assessment, proper risk assessment for that change process, for that change work. Appointment of competent people. We also need competent people for those work who are doing the change work. Segregation of the work area. We can fencing the area, or we can segregate in a different manners. Amendment of emergency procedure, and we need proper emergency procedure for those change also. Then welfare provisions. Also, we need welfare provision for example, we need additional dining hall, additional sitting room, additional accommodations. We need these things to manage the change in our company in a better manner. Review of change as the change progresses and when the change has been introduced. Health and safety performance should be reviewed to ensure there are no adverse impacts due to hazards not identified or control measures not being effective. We need to review the progress of the change because this is very important. Then we will check and then we will identify the control measure and the hazards that is managed in a better manner or not. Adverse impacts identified at this stage may require further analysis and development of additional actions items. The review should also identify what went well in the change process in order to learn from the benefits, future changes. So review is very important. We will understand the during the review that we are in the on the correct track, or we lapses from the plan or from the correct track. So we need to review or change. Next topic, safe system of work for general work activities. Safe system of work for general work activities. What, why a worker should be involved in their development, why a procedure should be documented, technical, procedural, and behavioral controls, developing a safe system of work, monitoring the safe system of work. We will discuss one by one why workers should be involved in their development, why the worker should be involved in safe system of work. Workers' involvement in the development of such safe system of work is essential to ensure safe behavior when working to the system. By discussing proposed system of work with workers, it is possible to learn the practicalities and ensure the system of work takes account of them. Involvement often ensures a deeper understanding of hazards and risks in how safe system of work will reduce those risks. It's important that we should involve the workers during the safe system of work because they will work on their system. If they will involve, they will learn. In front of them, everything we will prepare everything in front of them. Why procedure should be documented in safe system of work? Why procedure should be documented? Because the documented is a record whether the safe system of work is complex or the risk of not working to create or high. It is important to define what must be done in a written procedure. We need a written procedure and we need all the safe system of work in a written procedure because that will be recorded and we can use that in later. The most effective are those that are clear, simple, and easily understood. It is important that procedure express how the work is done, not just how it should be done in theory. We need practically that how the procedure will be done in the organization. Because this procedure we will use repeatedly. Then technical, procedural, and behavioral controls. In the workplace, we use a variety of controls as part of the safe system of work in order to give emphasis to them and to help identify how complete our approach to health and safety. We group controls into a number of categories. Technical controls include equipment, access, and material. Procedural controls include policy, rules, and procedures. Behavioral controls include knowledge, attitude, and supervisions. So these three controls, these three are the category of safe system of work: technical controls, procedural control, and behavioral control. And technical control, we will, and that include the equipment, access, and materials. We can control that in a safe manner. And procedural control, we will introduce the policies, the rules, procedures for the workers. And behavioral control of the workers include knowledge to the worker, and they're changing their attitudes and supervision for the workers. Technical control, that is we can use for the place or for the job. Procedural, we can use for the system, to change the system or the organization. And behavioral procedure, we can change, we can control the person, we can control the workers, we can control the peoples. Developing a safe system of work, how we develop the safe system of work, analyzing the task, hazard identification and risk assessment, introducing controls and formulating procedures, instruction and training, and the operation of the system. When we are developing the safe system of work, first we will analyze the task. We will bring the task in small components. Then we will identify the hazards from that component. and we will take the risk from that companies, and we will prepare risk assessment for that. And then we will introduce control measure or procedures for each hazards or risk to control in a better manner. And instruction, training, and operation in the system. We need proper instruction to implement the SAP system of work, or we need proper training to implement this SAP system of work in a better manner. How we will analyze the task, analyzing the task. Analysis of the task must consider not only the work to be done, but the environment where it is to be done, to allow a full consideration of hazards to be made and the establishment of an effective safe system of work. Complex or high-risk work activities may involve a detailed review known as job or task analysis. Job or task analysis consists of a formal step-by-step examination of the work to be carried out. Job-based considering all the work of a specific group of people. Task-based considering specific work. And the task analysis is what we will do. We will, first of all, we will select the task. Then we will bring that task in small components, or we will break down the task in small components. Then we will identify the hazards with each component. And we will also identify the risk from that hazards. Then we can develop the control measure or the procedures for that hazards or risk. And the last one, we need to record in a proper manner the task analysis, and we need to monitor to develop that control measures to control the hazards in a task. Hazard identification in developing safe system of work and risk assessment. The identification of hazard and the assessment of risk are important factors arising from the analysis stage of developing safe system of work. The analysis will provide data on the steps that comprise the work and will also usually provide information on hazards related to the work and current control measures and indicate the need for further control measures. This is an important reflective stage of the development of the safe system of work. Introducing controls and formulating procedure during developing a safe system of work. The first phase in introducing controls and formulating procedure is to define the safe and healthy methods. In situation where the risk related to the work is high, this must be done in writing, often in a procedure. Once the system of work has been developed and agreed, preparation for implementation can proceed. It is important that care be taken to ensure that controls referred to when the system of work was being developed and defined are available to the workers when the system of the work is implemented. So during introduction of controls or formulating a procedure, we need to properly control the hazards which we identified from the task. And we need to prioritize the hazards and risks. And according to that, if the hazards or risk is the high, we will give priority to that hazards or risk. And then we will, first we will control that one. Then we will control the medium, and last we will control the low hazards. So in this way, we can control the hazards in a better manner. Instruction and training and the operations of the system. When we are developing a safe system of work, we need to train the workers, or we need to instruct the workers about that, issuing procedures relating to safe system of work. Without instruction and training can lead to a great deal of misunderstanding. We need proper training. We need proper instruction. When we develop the safe system of work, we need to give proper training to the worker on that safe system of work. What the system of work is and will often lead to people not being motivated to work to the system. When we prepare the SAP system of work, we need to properly train all the workers. We need to instruct the workers about that SAP system of work. A more assured way to introduce the system would be to utilize such things as tools workshop, where team leaders brief their work group at the start of the shift regarding any relevant day-to-day issues or the introduction of new technology or equipment. So normally we are informing during the toolbox talk our workers about the safe system of work, or if there's any new technology or equipment, we will tell to them about the hazards or the risk in their technology or the equipment. So in that way, they will better manage those things. They will better manage the hazards. They will better manage the control. They will better manage, or they will better control the hazards in a better manner. In addition to worker training, it is important to ensure that training of those that manage workers take place. And the training should be effective, efficient, and we need to monitor the workers after the training that they are doing in a safe manner the work or not. A safe system of work monitoring the system or monitoring the safe system of work. All safe system of work should be formally monitored and records kept of compliance and effectiveness. This can be done by direct observations or by discussion a team. This can be done by direct observation or by discussion at team meetings or safety committee meetings. We need to monitor everything, and we need to discuss these things in safety committee meetings, or we can observe directly. We can check that the safe system uh, are followed or not, are implemented or not by the workers. The safe system of work should not simply be imposed upon the people responsible for their operations. This we need to properly implement, and we need to take feedback from the workers, because the safe system means that the work should be done in a safe manner. Then permit work system, meaning a permit work system, why permit work system are used, how permit work system are used, when to use a permit work system. One by one we will discuss. Meaning a permit work system. A permit work system is a formal written administrative system used to control certain types of jobs that have high hazards potential. A permanent work system should not be applied to every task except in certain permanent high risk work, as this may distract from its importance. If you will apply this permanent work to every task, it may distract from its importance and lead to it being treated as nothing more than a bureaucratic form completions exercise. So we need for high risk activities, we need for non-routine activities a permanent work system. And the permanent work system should be efficient, should be authoritative, and should be a proper management system for the permanent work system. We need a proper management system. A permanent work system, why permanent work system are used? A permanent work system is an integral part of safe system of work and can help to properly manage the work activities we are using to properly manage the work activities. The purpose of a permanent work system is to ensure that full consideration is given to the risk of the particular work that is related to and to control the way of working in order to ensure a safe system of work is followed. This is the purpose of the permanent work system. We need to control the risk, and we need to understand that the people are following the safe system of work during their work or not. So this is the purpose of the permanent work system. How permanent work system work and are used? The requirements of an effective permit work system are that it must be formal and documented, simple to operate, have the commitment of those who operate and are affected by, provide concise and accurate information on the permit, ensure liaison with controllers of others plant or work areas those activities may be affected by the permit work, require that boundaries or limits of work area are clearly marked or otherwise defined, include contractors undertaking specific tasks in the permit work system, including any briefing prior to commencement of work, be supported by training in the system or allowing working under it and affected by it. The permit to work system should be effective. We need proper system for this permit work system. We need permit issuer, then we also need permit receiver, and we need proper format for this permit documentations that should be simple, concise, and we need a unique number for every permit. And we need proper record for the permit, and we need different copies of the permit, and the permit should be available at the workplace. And the carbon copies should be available with the authorities, for example, HEC department, operation departments. But the main copy should be displayed at the workplace. And the permit to work system, during the permit to work system, the issuer should go to visit the workplace and then issue the permit. Because he cannot, this is not acceptable that he will issue the permit from his office. He need to check before issuing the permit the workplace. He need to check. It's important. That is the important part of the permit work system. When to use the permit work system? For the hard work, for example, welding, work on live electrical system, work on a transformer, machinery or plant maintenance, for example, power generation plant, floor mills, or lift systems, confined spaces, for example, chamber, tank, bed, silo, pit, well, pipe, sewer, flue, working at height, for example, ladder roofs, working near a cellar. We can use different other types of permit also, cold work permit, lifting permit, permit for night shifts, road closure permit. So these are the excavation permits, scaffolding permits, but this depend upon the client requirements. And according to that, we can use the permit. This is a confined space chamber. Or last topic, emergency procedures. Emergency procedure, that's very important. Why emergency procedure needed to develop? What to include in emergency procedures? First aid requirements, why people need training in emergency procedures need testing. So we will study one by one why emergency procedure need to be developed. It is important to develop and implement emergency procedure for potentially major loss causing event in order to bring the event under control promptly, reduce the effect of the event, and enable a fast return to normal operations. Adequate emergency procedures should be in place or developed to control likely emergencies. For example, a fire, terrorist threat, spillage, release of hazardous substances, explosion, vehicle collision, severe weather, major injury, poisoning, or exposure to pathogens, or release of radioactivity. So emergency can be happen anytime, but this emergency depend upon the situation and condition of the workplace. So according to that, we need to prepare emergency procedures. What include in emergency procedures? Typical scope of emergency procedure. Emergency procedure should cover what might happen and how the alarm will be raised in a coming. How emergencies are communicated with the organization to different groups of peoples. The plan responses to emergency, how the worker will respond if there is any emergency. Then the people who will be involved in implementing the procedures and the training that will need for the emergency. Ali Imran, any problem? Any equipment needed to deal with the emergency? Nomination of competent people to take control, plan of essential actions. Then arrangements for contacting emergencies services or rescue services. Employers should involve the emergency and rescue services as part of the process of establishing emergency arrangements for contacting them. This will allow the employer to discuss potential emergencies with the emergency and rescue services and agree arrangements to contact them at the time of an emergency. Depending on the emergency arrangements, this could mean contacting internal emergency and rescue services initially, and when the internal emergencies team decide external services will be required, promptly contacting them. This emergency services is very important to communicate to all workers in the organization. For example, we need to communicate the emergency number, the internal emergency number with the workers. And we need to communicate the other numbers, the national numbers, for example, for police 999 and UAE 998, for example, for fire, and 997 for the ambulance. So we need to communicate these emergency numbers with our workers. The other emergencies number, for example, the first aider number in our projects, the ERT team, emergency response team number. We need to properly communicate those numbers. Then first aid requirements to ensure adequate first aid provisions. An employer should make an assessment to determine the first aid needs of the organization. When making the assessment, consideration should be given to a number of factors, include the size of the organization, the type of workforce, the need to provide first aid at all times when workers are on site, different work activities, past experience. So these factors we will consider when we will provide the first aid requirements in the organization. Why people need a training and emergency procedure need testing? People need training related to emergencies and emergency procedure so that in the event of an emergency, the people who may be in danger act in a calm, orderly, and efficient way. Are designated with specific duties, carry them out in an organized and effective manner. So these are the purpose that we need to train our workers, our special team on emergency procedures and emergency. Training will provide people with essential knowledge so they are able to identify an emergency more promptly and raise the alarm quickly, enabling an opportunity to respond to the emergency and limit the effects. The training should include practice drills to reinforce the knowledge and establish the actions as a practice routine, making this familiar and more likely to be repeated without hesitation or doubt. Because this mock drills and training, that's very important to understand the people, to understand the worker, to understand to give the knowledge to the emergency response team. So for that, we need proper training to the worker that they will understand their roles and responsibility during the emergency. This was end of the lecture. So now we will open the window for the question answer. We will close the recording. Okay.